the session. So welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about damage-centered research and desire-centered research, building upon the scholarship of Ib Tak that you guys probably read last week. Also, we're going to think and reflect about sampling methods that you probably already know for qualitative research. So we're just going to revise strategies for non-probabilistic sampling in this structure, and your projects, which are really cool rationals. I provided more detailed feedback from all of you, so all of the projects are really interesting. I really like how you were detailed. Some projects needed more tailored feedback in terms of the data collection itself, more than the framework of thought. Everybody has great frameworks of thought, so congratulations of that. Like, you already know, oh, it's positivistic, or it's constructive, or neo modern, or things like that, right? Like, everybody understands, which I consider my job done in that section. I'm not gonna go any more further on that, which is already difficult part in this qualitative framework. However, what I want to suggest to the people that got feedback on thinking about the data collection is think about how you're going to collect your data. Start reading more in-depth data collection tools. If you want to do in-depth interviews, if you want to do focus groups, or if you want to do participatory research or ethnographic research, think what tool and read about it in our book, what will bring better in that data to what you want to do. So, and don't think in this regard to your thesis, think about what will make a more relevant study. I say this because this is not, for getting a grade. This is, think about this as you as a graduate student, more arguing why you should be admitted into a research project or a graduate program. So you have to think about how innovative your research can be. And that's something that's more competitive, so think about how to make it more relevant, more interesting. Probably do a little bit of research on Google Scholar, or papers in your field, or multidisciplinary research. Okay, if I'm doing studies about education or psychology, what has not been done? What are the gaps in knowledge that have not been explored? So how I can build upon that with new tools. So for example, if I'm already studying, let's say, therapy for people that's victim of a trauma, and everybody has done in the interviews, it's nothing new, but probably the new aspect could be the way you analyze your data. Probably the new aspect could be if you do ethnographic research, like photo voice, or how you provide tools to your audience to elicit probably arts-based research, invite your patients to do art around their feelings and how they feel around their issues, and code that art. That could be a more nuanced part to show the lived experiences of people that add something new to the literature, right? So in this particular area, think about, and that's when I'm gonna jump into Ib Tak and that reading that's very rich. Think about not saving the world, but adding something new. So think you're walking towards in a stair, in a really long stair, right? Like when you're already tired and going up. So you're not gonna be on the top of the mountain, but how you make a meaningful step up. It's gonna be something hard, yes, but how you make a steady step that it's meaningful, right? Like how you add something new that has not been done. And with that regard, I want to open the discussion about damage-centered research and desire-centered research with Eve Tuck and what she was talking about, how research has been done in terms of our traditions of how we collect data and how we've been trained in academia to do this. So for example, what do you think about the author when she talks about damage-centered research? What did it mean to you after reading that paper?
That maybe the focus of the research that is damage narrows the narrative of those cultures that after those results, like the results of the investigations that are just about damage, their narratives follow that narrow path that will be that, I don't know, maybe their posterior narrative will be we are a damaged society or a damaged culture.
Right? Yeah. Good, Salvador. Like, so what that means, like we're a damaged society. What could be like examples of being like a damaged society or damaged individual?
Well, for this example that you mentioned, Denise, I think that historical studies are uh, well known for having these narratives, especially the the colonialism ones. So yeah, I've been reading to González Suárez, which is a colonialist writer from Ecuador, but from the church. Don't worry. The thing is that the outcomes of that research only talks about how were the abuses to our originary people. Understand? So that's what I think that can be like an outcome of those narratives. Like we think that we are a society historically we've been oppressed, and that's what people keeps on their minds. Okay, so I got that idea from the lecture that we read.
Okay, great. Yeah, like that's also inheritance of colonization, right? Like how we learn who we are, like when we are in school and they tell you the story of our nations, our countries, like, oh, we're colonized, right? Like remember when probably you learn about history and oh, like we were like, you know, Incas or Canaries, and then the Spaniards came. So I don't know about you. I can probably be, you know, I don't know, maybe your elder, like your younger aunt, or probably your mother too. But when I was like on school, even we used to celebrate Columbus Day, right? So it was like, oh, like Columbus Day, like the discovery of the Americas, like, right? Like what discovery? We were here before, right? So then like after a while, I don't know if you remember that, like, but then it came like a counter narrative, like what discovery? Like we were here, right? Like, but all that, oh, we came and we were so underdeveloped and we were like poor and we didn't have shoes. So all these portrayals, right? Like all these portrayals, like we don't have a language and we don't live in the right way and we don't speak the right language and we don't do the things in the ways it shouldn't be done, right? Like all these normative ways of seeing the world. So if you look into Eve Tax, is like, so Eve Tax, if you research about her, she's like indigenous scholar from Native American scholarship, such as very similar from our indigenous scholars in Latin America, right? So there's many overlappings with what we've been studying in Latin America, because if you look into the books we study in the university, is like, oh, like Freud, or I don't know, in marketing, Cutler, or all of these things on communication, Gruning, but we also study Jesus Martin Barbero, right? Like, so probably sometimes even in your own fields, Santiago Bane and Fernanda and Juliana, so like, okay, like when you have the books in your hands, right, for your discipline, it's like, oh, we study all these theories that come from Northern countries or European countries, and that's the way we're supposed to do things. But when scholars from our cultures come, like, but this resonates more with us, right? Like it's more real in our context, or we spend hours and days trying to adapt these theories to our reality, because we don't have the same tools, we don't have the same resources, we don't have the same language, we even don't name the things in the same way. So it's kind of like difficult to navigate, right? We even don't do research in the same way. So we learn how to do research, but also there's this imbalance in inequity of how things are portrayed. So when you see historical, like Alejo said, González Suárez, like, oh, like history shows like these people didn't have this, and sounding very like, you know, almost like you're talked down, like oppressed or underdeveloped nations. Or even like if you look into the news, like or G8 nations and underdeveloped nations, right? Like under which framework this comes from, right? Like economical power or hegemonical power.
Nuclear power.
Or nuclear power, like, you know, like, so under which framework that comes from, right? So if a tax says also from the perspective of individuals, when we do research, we have to think about that most research has been done from a damage-centered approach. So you're always researching on what's lacking, why what there's problems, what people is affected, like, so it's reproducing that damage, right? Like, oh, the victims of, I don't know, trauma. And how you study that people might probably leave people more traumatized, right? Because you have to ask them questions or observe them, and probably they have to remember things that are hard for them to remember. And might be hard for them too, right? So what Van is saying, is it possible to use PAR in damage-centered research? It is possible, definitely, to use it. So participatory action research can be done in damage-centered research, yes, but it's more resonant in desire-centered research. Because what? When you go to see particularly people, researchers usually say like, hey, I'm gonna study, I don't know, the results of trauma in patients that are feeling, I don't know, post-trauma, something like that, right? But you go with the agenda. People don't get a say in your research. Desire-centered research instead, what Eve Tuck is saying, people should have an agency in your research because it's their life, right? They should say, hey, okay, you're the expert, but this is my life, this is my time. So I should be able to say, hey, okay, you're gonna research with my life, but what are you gonna give me in return? Right? Like, I have to get something out of this, and that's completely okay. So new research done until from the colonial epistemology suggests that like you can do research in anything you want, but you should have a conversation and negotiate those terms with people, right? To avoid this damage-centered research that reproduces power and reproduces all over again the same history of the world, like all the underdevelopment, all pain, all trauma all over and over again, right? So how you, the next generation of researchers, can do this from your own interest is approaching people that you want to research and say like, hey, this is my interest, but I want to do something that really contributes at least something to improve the situation, and listen to what people have to say about this. So for example, if you're in business and you say, I want to do promotion strategies for small businesses in Cuenca through social media, what do you need? Oh, people might say things that are super simple, such as, I need how to create content with my smartphone to sell more because I don't know how to. Teach me that. That can be your project. You can teach people that and build scholarship about that, right? So people will end up with a tool, and that's participatory research, when they say like, hey, I don't know how to take good pictures. I don't know how engage customers. Teach me. And you can like, do that participatory. So Vane, when you were asking about that, it is completely feasible, but you have to make people part of your study, asking them what they need, right? So this new framework of research, I want to be completely honest with you, not every tradition in scholarship will accept that. It's not the easiest path in science, but it's the most meaningful way to do studies, because you probably won't be the academic superstar. However, you have better chances to build stronger relationships with the community and build more meaningful studies in the long haul for your discipline. And why do you think it is not that easy? What challenges can emerge when you're challenging the way things have been done for so many centuries and decades in academia? When you dare to do things a little bit different?
I think because some teachers don't know how to use participatory action research, so they are kind of scared to guide you in that process that they even don't know how to do it. But at the same time, I think that an inherent, I don't know if that's the correct way to say, to an inherent problem in participatory action research is that you need that someone collaborates you. You need the collaboration of others, and that sometimes it's kind of difficult because people is busy, people are doing another things and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Very true, Rad. So it's very hard, and you totally describe the right reasons. You have to find a good tribe of people that is gonna willing to do it with you. It is time consuming, right? But also that's committed to make it happen, right? So the commitment has to be there. It has to be a shared effort. It has to be an ethical effort to make it happen. And it's something that it cannot happen alone. It is something that has to be collaborative and has to be a very respectful process of work and discussion and constant discussion. But it has to be narrowed down to a specific outcome that people can work together. So what IFTALK is suggesting, for example, is commit yourself to something really specific that people need. This is not only for participatory research, it could be even qualitative research, you know? So in this specific regard, this means setting the time and setting the limits. So for example, let's explore together how you guys will be able to consume a product, to consume a service, or improve this current situation. Like if you have the power to make this differently, how you will make this happen, right? Like, oh, if I could change the way psychologists give therapy to this particular patient, how ideal therapy sessions will be for you. So they will say, I don't like the therapy happens in closed spaces. I would like to have it in a garden or in a more comfortable space, or reimagine the way the therapist talks to me and having, I don't know, something to reduces my stress in the time I'm talking to my doctor. All of that is possible. So it could be an in-depth interview that happens in a different way. It can be the process of creating something different. So for example, let me tell you an example of how I use this framework in a particular project for myself. So during the pandemic, I was doing a study of how feminist groups in Cuenca were advocating on social media for feminicide and other gender-based violence. And we did mostly focus groups and said like, this is an issue we're facing. So they would say like, we're grassroots groups. Our efforts are mostly getting together and organizing events to do fundraising to help victims of feminicide or rape, and they have to end up in courts. So victims usually don't get funds to pay a lawyer. So we have a set of lawyers that don't charge, but you know, there's always there's always something they have to spend in courts on paperwork and things like that when you go in a court, right? Like, so they do events from, I don't know, arts or selling different things to support victims of violence. So it's like what actually happens, our events are really popular, but now public figures and beauty queens are stealing our ideas and profiting from pretty much the same ideas we're having and have done in this last decade. And even these public figures do that as part of political parties, even copying the same logos and the same everything we've done. And they don't acknowledge us at all. So they were pretty pissed, okay? And they were like critiquing these public figures on social media, and they were retaliated heavily on social media and harassed and victims of cyberbullying and all of that. So they're like, we are upset. We don't know what to do. We're being attacked on our personal profiles. So how we get out of this, right? So that was the issue. And we were discussing, okay, like how you can protect yourself when you advocate for your ideas. And of course, they cannot get copyright like of their events, right? They cannot pay for a copyright to do like, okay, this event is copyrighted, like it's only from our group, nobody can do it anymore, right? It's a grassroots group, it's like an organic event. So what we do is sit down and create a tool. So like, okay, let's do a tool that help you protect yourself from trolling and cyber violence, and what you can do on social media to protect yourself from these attacks of trolling and all of these things. So we gathered a lawyer, a psychologist, me as a communication specialist said, like, these are things you can do. And we created like a decalogue of tips that they can do. And we train them like, okay, if you want to advocate, these are things you have to do. You have to have a support group. You have to let other people know that you're going to do this. And they apply that and say like, okay, and you have to pass this information down to your team and you have to commit to do this and so on. And it really helped them. So, and then we did the piece with them. So like, okay, do you want to do the piece with us? And say like, yeah, we will do the in like a booklet and artwork so they can have it like in different groups. So for example, instead of just talking about how hurt they were, the horrible things people were saying to them on social media and how traumatized they were, we also focus, okay, how you wanna overcome this issue? What do you wanna do with this? So the psychologist had one idea, the lawyer had another idea, I had ideas, but we have to listen to what they want to do. So it's also the power of self-determination that you give to people. So you have to respect what people want to do. Even as an expert that's like, oh, like this is what you should do, you have to be able to respect their willingness and guide them. Like, of course, like if people like, oh, I want to kill them, like, no, like that's not an option. But you know, like you have to like, okay, guide them, but not mislead them. Like, you know, okay, these are your options. This can happen in every path. Like, I can help you out with this. What do you think? Oh yeah, like this will help me move on and not quit my activism. And that was the end of the project. So what we did with that piece that's still under review on some journal is share the authorship with the people that draw the piece and make all of that. So we're co-authors. Do you see? So it's another framework of making research. So the piece itself, like the manual, we're co-authors on it. So it's a different framework. It is time consuming. It took us 2 years to do that. So including the peer review, not only the data collection. So just to let you know. Vale.
How many people do you need in order to call your project a participatory action research? I mean, how many people needs to be, for example, what happens if there's just one person, for example? Can it be called participatory action research?
I mean, it depends how many population you want to tackle. In this particular project, I was driving the project mainly, but there was less than 10 participants, so it was attainable. But in other projects with participatory action research, I had up to 100 people participating in different sessions, and we have to assemble teams of 5 facilitators per participatory sessions because there's a lot of people and you have to, like, you know, like record, code that data, debrief the data, and all of that. So it depends how much people and how much information you're trying to get out of that. But what I'm meaning in terms of ethics, damage center and desire center research are not bounded to be always participatory research. You can do qualitative interviews, you can do focus groups, you can do ethnographic research. It's not only participatory. Participatory data collection is other thing too, but you can do interviews and have this framework and also listen to the audience and what they want to do. Any other question? Okay, so for touching base on sampling, because next week you will cover the topics of the module of 5, and I will put that on our discussion board, it's sampling. So for example, with qualitative tools for data collection, you have to think about that this is different than quantitative research. So here, mostly you don't have formulas to select your population, right? Here, most likely, you have to establish criteria for including and excluding people and how you will select the people to participate in your study. So for example, if you're doing interviews or you're doing focus groups, how you're gonna select the people that's gonna participate in these sessions, you have to think about characteristics that people might have to include them. So for example, it could be depending on convenience. So usually it's non-probabilistic sampling that you probably covered already in your undergrad degree. And that non-probabilistic sampling has to have inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria, right? So inclusion criteria will be all the characteristics that make somebody to be part of your sample, depending on your study. So for example, Salvador, can you remind us characteristics of your population, of who you want to work with?
Yeah, it was of my thesis or for my project.
For this project.
Yeah, it was. I think it was young adults from. Yeah, young adults from the city of Cuenca.
Okay, but what specifically, in what specific topic, in what specific way?
In the topic of narratives. So my topic is I was going to try to study the narratives that people have in regard to relationships. So there are some narratives that I don't know, the man should do this and the woman should do that. And there are different stages in the courtship process. So different narratives would apply to different stages in those processes. So yeah, I think I don't remember the specific population. I don't remember if the population was young adults in general from Cuenca, but if that is the case, maybe I would do non-random sampling, because I don't know, maybe I would go to a place where people a very crowded place like Parque Calderón, and then ask people. So that will be each person of Cuenca, each young adult of Cuenca would not have the same probability of being chosen, because not everyone goes to that place.
Mm-hmm. So for example, in that in that characteristic, what recruiting criteria do you think it would be more feasible for you to find, or more strong strategy could be more feasible for you to find the right people, to be non-probabilistic? Because if you say random, that's already probabilistic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wait, can you repeat the question?
So let's remember two things, right? Like when we're talking about sampling, we have probabilistic and non-probabilistic, right?
Yes.
So probabilistic are more aligned with what? Quantitative, right?
Yes.
Quantitative methods are always formula-based. That could be, a number of a population we usually get out of INEC or any other database, right?
Mhm.
So if we say probabilistic way, by saying random, it's already a little bit probabilistic, because if
Right.
I pick up people like, from a
Yes.
specific pool, yes, that's already probabilistic. But if we
Yeah,
say
you're right.
non-probabilistic, how we can like be so open that anybody from a specific characteristic or anybody can sign up, but I have criteria to select them. So you must have, for example, an age group you want to explore, right? Which is
Yes.
your age group?
So young adults, that will be from 19 to maybe 25.
Great.
And then
Like,
another criteria would be people that have been in a relationship of any kind.
mhm.
So that will be from, I don't know, from friends that, I don't know, that like each other, to boyfriend, girlfriend, and marriage, and all the spectrum of relationships.
Right. So
Mhm.
you have to make that criteria, right? Like, so your
Yes.
criteria will be pretty much age group between 19 and 25, that you're from Cuenca, men, women,
Right.
or LGBTQ, if you want to do that too, or just men and women, heterosexual, or LGBTQ diversity, if that it's included or not. And you have to be clear about that. And then you will have to say that have been in a sentimental, romantic relationship that has these characteristics. Like, it could be like, I don't know, friends with benefits, or committed relationship, or
Mhm.
I don't know, polyamorous relationship, like, like all kinds of relationships that you're gonna explore or not. Or let's say like you're just gonna explore committed relationships, or friends with benefits relationships. Like, I don't know,
Right.
like it depends on your study, right?
Or with the hole in the field, or with the hole in the field, like the part of
Situationship.
no, I mean the I don't know, some phenomenon that hasn't been explored by the
Right,
community.
right. So you have to like put all the options
Mhm.
of what is included and what's not included. So what would be not included? Like, oh, so if you're not a citizen of Cuenca, if you are older than 25, if you are married, or if you have not been in a relationship at all in the last year or 2 years, or never been in a relationship, if you are underage, if you, I don't know, don't want to be in a relationship at all, like all of that would be your exclusion criteria. So do you
Right.
see? So non-probabilistic methods, you have to think about carefully a profile of the person that you want to study and the person you don't want to study. So for example, you have to create that profile list. So whenever you want to select, you want to think about how to call people. So for example, strategical options are very optional right now for this kind of studies. Social media ads are great because you can put a call out there and pay, I don't know, put $10 on a Google, on an ad on Facebook, and say, make an ad. If you have been in a relationship, or I'm a research study from the University of Cuenca. It's making an exploration of relationship spectrum perceptions in our city. And if you are between 19 and 25 and are interested in participating, sign up here. And then you put a form and people sign up their name, email, and so you can contact them. and you will have a database. Say like, okay, who match my criteria and who does not match my criteria. So people who are willing already to participate, and then you can select your pool, right? Your pool of participants.
And
Because it's
let's say that I don't know, 300 people. They are under my criteria. Then I can select, like, for example, random people from that pool to do the interviews and
right.
and
Yes.
all my tools.
Right. Like let's say your target is to reach 30 people and 300 sign up, right? It's always better to have more than have less, right? Why? Because some people always in this type of studies, oh yeah, I want to participate, but the time you schedule the meetings, always less people show up. Or always less people is available when you're available to do the meetings or the focus groups or the participatory sessions or whatever you're going to do. So it's always better to have a bigger pool. So in terms of sampling, for example, if you're doing already qualitative studies, it's problematic if you do a random, because that's already not qualitative, it's quantitative. Do you see?
Yes.
So if it's purely qualitative, it cannot be random. But if it's mixed methods, it can be. So if you're instead, if you're doing a mixed methods approach, you have a quantitative section, if you have a qualitative section, you can use, okay, I'm gonna recruit 300 people, and out of the 300, I'm gonna use 30 interviews, but those 30 interviews are gonna be non-probabilistic, select with inclusion and exclusion criteria. That's fine because that's the qualitative section. Then let's say you're gonna do surveys. The surveys have to be, probabilistic because that's quantitative. But that's under a mixed methods approach.
Okay.
So
how would I don't know, 300 people reach my criteria? If it is non-probabilistic, how would you choose the 30 people?
You will select the best options according to what you want to have in terms of your inclusion and exclusion criteria. So let's say, for example, usually good criteria is not to over-focus on men or not to over-focus on women. So for example, 50-50 men, 50-50 women. Let's say if you want to explore men, like heterosexual and LGBTQ groups, you will have to divide 25, like 3 chunks, not to over-focus in heterosexual relationships, but also LGBTQ relationships. So it will have to be 25, like at least, 50-50 of relationships, but not over-focuses on men and women and LGBTQ. So men, women, men, women, men, women, but under the other 50 have to be LGBTQ, So try to be at least in terms of equity in numbers, but gender.
Okay.
To not be biased. Yes, Vane.
Teacher, but if we apply this example that Salvador said, that maybe he wants to do a qualitative and quantitative research, and he have a certain criterion, and he select those people randomly, but based it on that criterion. I mean, for example, he have 300 people, and he just use for the qualitative research, just use or just interview, for example, 30 people. But then the other people that he have, they would be part of the quantitative process. That also would be no, that also would be no probabilistic at the end of the day, because as you said before, he select a population based on a specific criterion.
Yeah, but it depends on how he designs the study, Vane, because it depends on the goal of recruitment. Like it depends how many people. Let's say if he starts recruiting people just for non-probabilistic goals, right? Let's say he only wants to do qualitative, non-probabilistic study, just the interviews, right? Do you hear me? Can you hear me? No?
No, teacher, I wasn't able to hear you.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Sí.
Okay, good. So I think my battery is a little low in the headphones, but let me know if you miss me out. Okay, so it depends on how you start the study. So it doesn't matter, like you have to have it clear from the beginning. So from the beginning, you have to know if the study is purely qualitative or mixed, right? So from the beginning, non-probabilistic studies have to think about having non-probabilistic samples. So let's say Salvador wants to have 30 interviews or 50 interviews or 100 interviews. That's up to him, right? So the best you can do is if you're aiming to have 30 interviews, okay, try to recruit 40 people, 10 more, right? Just in case something happens, but not like 500 or 300, right? So you don't need to go over the loop so much. But let's say if you want to do mixed methods approach and several data collection tools, that's different. So then you have to think how many tools you want to incorporate into the study. So it depends from the beginning what type of study you're designing. But if it's only qualitative, you have to think about always non-probabilistic inclusion and exclusion criteria to select the people, but also have a goal of recruitment to select the accurate point of people that you want to have to collect your data. So it doesn't have to be too much if it's only qualitative, but it doesn't have to be too little in order to lose it. And did I make myself clear?
Yes, teacher. Well, from what I understood is that, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, even if we think that we're doing we're having a probabilistic sample, for example, in quantitative research, at the end of the day is no probabilistic, right? Because we have like criterions that we use to select those people, even if we do it randomly. Or I don't know if I'm wrong.
I mean, probabilistic studies are other thing, Vane. Like probabilistic is always quantitative. Non-probabilistic is qualitative. That's a
Okay.
different, yes. Fernanda?
Denise, good afternoon. So as I can understand what you're saying, can we do the qualitative and quantitative research, I mean, mixed in order to enhance the research? And for this course, we have to apply the both of them, or am I wrong?
No, for this course, only qualitative is required. However, if you want to do a study that's combined with both of them, outside this course in the future for your graduate studies, it is possible to do mixed method studies. So I'm just providing context of how that works. But this course is purely qualitative. So mixed method studies totally are existent. You can do them. You can recruit people for doing quantitative sections and qualitative sections in the same project, but this course is only focused on qualitative studies. But I'm just providing context. I don't want to mislead you, but I also don't want to confuse you saying like, oh, qualitative studies are not combinable with quantitative, are totally combinable, but it is a different approach when you want a sample. You have to combine.
Okay. Well, thank you, Denise. That was my
Oh.
question.
Of course. Great. Remember, for this project, you only have to expand the qualitative section of what you already done. I'm aware here there's many people doing engineering or many other quantitative things. So the purpose is for you to learn qualitative research. However, the project itself can be purely qualitative, so you don't have to break your head over it. So that's okay. Alrighty, so in that specific regard, the purpose of this discussion was just to think about how challenging ways of how research is done, but also start thinking to move forward how research can be also more inclusive to people, how to move away from studies that also create rejection from audiences, right? So what non-expert, non-scientific audiences hate about researchers is that people go extract knowledge from them and walk away. People don't like that. That's, for example, indigenous communities, minorities, even you, like, right? Like when somebody shows up under your door or calls to your home, I want to make a survey about service. Like, how do you feel? Like, oh, annoyed, right? Like you get annoyed. Like, again, they want to ask me things and I don't get nothing out of this, right? So people feel the same. And if you are going to be a researcher in the future, this is going to be more heavy on the audiences. You have to think about how be more inclusive, because this is not going to change. This is a growing pain. And also you have to think about, if you're going to be the faculty of the future, how to train your students to be more inclusive in the way we build the scholarship, right? Think about how patients, how people in factories, how audiences from media and campaigns, how employees, how students in educational systems feel when they are surveyed, studied, observed, to get knowledge extracted from them and they don't get nothing back from that. Right? Like there's expectations in people to see an improvement for them. And it's in our hands to make that change happen. So as a student, for example, when you do your course evaluations from your faculty and you say, hey, the professor is good, but I would like having a class guest once in a while, right? I would like this course to improve in this way, and nothing happens. You will be disappointed, right? Like the first thing is there's a change, there's an improvement, right? So make that for you too, because if you want to be a professor one day, you have to also be open to challenge that for yourself. So it's not easy. It's also an intellectual critical exercise that you have to be willing to do for yourself. It's not like, oh, like, I'm just going to challenge scholarship. Like, like I'm just going to change the world on my hands. It's also the commitments that you do for yourself, right? It's not an easy pill to swallow. It's like, oh, like I'm going to criticize everybody because I'm perfect. Like we're not perfect. right? We're not. Like it's not easy to get criticism. It is not easy, right? But okay, take it and read it. Like, okay, my students would like more from me in this way. How I make this happen. Is this a healthy criticism? It is how I decide critically what to take and what not to take. So I really, really like this paper. I think that was one of the papers from my doctoral studies that really changed the way I saw as a young faculty. Back then, I'm not young anymore. But I mean, like as a young faculty member, I saw that really, really changed the way I saw my research, that I saw my students. Was like, okay, how much of the things I teach actually help my students to change the way things are reproduced all the time? How I select the scholarship I make them read. How I take the criticism they make or open spaces for them to tell me what they're expecting from me. But also how as a woman, how I also make space for myself to have respect for what I am, because I'm vulnerable too in academia, right? How I build that change that I want to see, but I build a safe space for myself too, right? It's what I want you to think with what we're learning is how you build a safe space for you as a future scholar, but also how you engage and commit to your research on a way that you see meaning on it. It's not just for getting you a job. Because if we're not just like machines producing papers, we're not just machines reproducing text on a blackboard, right? Like we actually want people to critically engage in something. Like it's not like, you know, that song, The Wall. Like, you know, like leave the kids alone. You know? So let's think about those commitments and how we and you as the group of excellence of the university don't become like the selfish people. Oh, I know everything. We don't know shit. We do good things probably well, but how we use our capabilities to not reproduce more damage. What do you think? How we use our capabilities to not reproduce more damage? Let's talk about that in our last 2 minutes.
Well, especially to be critical. Yeah. First of all, if we believe everything we hear, no, we can only reproduce what we hear. So, first of all, I think being critical, then to give the population studied or the participants like something meaningful for them. Yeah, with the PAR methodology, you can do that, but not only with that, you can do it in many ways. So to retribute the knowledge, and in the paper, the desire frameworks. That's what the paper said. I don't agree completely with that. I understand, but yeah, I think it can help to change these ideas, but it's not. It's more like a first step instead of a solution. You understand? So I think that we have to be critical in that way and to retribute to people that will be my answer.
Great, thank you, Alejo.
Denise, I think that how can we do that in order to be responsible of our actions? Because we are conscious of the impact of things. And as you said before, we don't know many things, but there's still I think that is our essence as humans that we think now, no, I know more. I'm in this semester, so I think that I know a little bit more of others. So I think that a way to do less damage. I think it's to be responsible and to know the impact of that and be empathic with with others, because later we can not feel in a better way than we were before, I think.
Thank you, Fernanda. Anybody else?
I think we also have to depathologize suffering, maybe through understanding that suffering is a part of the human condition. We can grow out of that victim mentality. So I think that will be a big part of that. The knowledge that everybody that I don't know, things like for example, colonization is a great example. Every culture was a colony of another culture. So, for example, we were colonized by Spain, but that region was colonized by, I think, I don't know, other cultures of the Oriente.
Middle East.
How do you say
Uh-huh.
Oriente?
Middle
Like
East.
Árabes. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think that through studying history, we can grow out of that victim mentality, because everybody is a culture was colonized by other people, and I don't know, things like we are as humans are vulnerable creatures. And also we know that we are going to die, so that creates anxiety, and I don't know, we don't have a clear purpose. So I don't know, that generates anxiety and depression. And
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe by knowing that that's a part of the human condition, and just accepting that, and focusing on goals, that would be a great solution. Because in psychology there is a therapy that speaks about that. It is called terapia de aceptación y compromiso. One of the first steps is to create values. So values, so a value is not a goal, but it's an aim. So a value is not to have friends, but a value is to be a good friend.
Mhm.
Because a goal ends, but a guide never ends.
Mhm.
And then the next step is like accepting that suffering is a part of human condition, and you have to be okay with that. And instead of on focusing on uh, on the suffering, on reducing the suffering, uh, you should focus on another thing, because you won't stop suffering. You
Mhm.
won't stop having anxiety. You won't stop feeling sad, and trying to stop that just burns your energy, and
Mhm.
you are spending energy in the wrong thing.
Mhm.
So maybe applying that body of ideas to this other body of ideas. Uh, uh, so accepting suffering and focusing on goals will be, I think, will be a great solution.
Right. That's so wonderful. Thank you everybody for sharing. I think that's one of the commitments. Like I think we have to like think about yourselves also as on, like honor students you are, how we use especially in this context in the world. I'm just gonna make this remark and leave that for you to sit on yourselves. It was such a wonderful class today. To think about in this competitive world, right? How we use what we know, who we are, and also acknowledge the layer of privilege we have, right? Like being on the top of our class, to open spaces for others, right? Like to make space for people. And what you said was such a wonderful thing, like acceptance and commitment. Like, thank you for sharing that approach on psychology, because it's impossible to stop pain and in life, right? But how we possibly, through our knowledge, okay, like people is suffering, it's impossible to stop it. Like climate change is impossible to stop it. Like, but what we do, right? Like, okay, it's no rain. Like it's energy cuts, like what we do, okay, solar panels, okay, where we get them, how we put them, like, right? Like if there's no money, how we collect that, like, okay, proactive thoughts instead of like, oh, we don't have it, like, oh, like we're doomed, like, right? Like that's the damage center thing that we're used to it, like the suffering, right? Okay, we're suffering, we're gonna suffer, it's unavoidable. How we tackle the suffering, and we commit to, okay, I'm more than a suffering person, I'm a thriving person, right? It's how you frame yourself. It's how also question back things, right? Instead of focusing on the issue, is questioning back the issue. Like if somebody is being attacked, why not ask the attacker, like, why you are attacking me, right? Why you are attacking me? What are your reasons? What are your reasons for attacking me? Okay, instead of like, oh, like, no, like, why you're attacking me? It's a counteract, like that's on the colonial act. Why you're saying this to me? That's not what I'm saying. Like you're already dismantling the situation. That you're protecting yourself, right? So that's such a wonderful approach. Thank you, Salvador, and thank you, Alejo, also, because the purpose of science itself, is that the step. It's like, hey, like there's other ways of doing things, right? So how we as honor students, also in this competitive mess, and I want to close this class with something that's very personal. It's my personal biases. I want to acknowledge this. I, as a professor, your own faculty, woman, immigrant, whatever you want to see me, I particularly hate to see people competing once again, each other, killing each other for the first spot of nobody cares about what, right? Instead of helping each other, right? I hate that. It makes no freaking sense in my mind, when actually kindness is something more valuable. There's values in people, right? To me, it's more valuable to see a student that extends the hand to the other, that wants to be better than the other. I don't know. For me, that's the equitable value on somebody. So let's think in our greater capacities, how we become agents of change, instead of shining stars that will shine a second and disappear in the middle of nowhere. Thank you all for this wonderful class. I will leave you the materials for the next week, and such a wonderful discussion. I'm looking forward to see you on December 20. I'm gonna leave you the materials for the next class. I won't be able to teach you on the 13th because I'll be flying, but I'm gonna leave you materials to covering out all of that. But the next week, I'll hope to see you on campus, and I'll let you know where. Thank you. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.